the phone out of Alicia's hand. The kitchen went silent. His mother stood by the stove. His cousin watched from the doorway. They all waited for Alicia to beg. Her lip trembled once, then stopped. She straightened her back and said nothing. Because before he took that phone, the call had already connected, and someone on the other end had heard everything. The Beaumont house smelled like candied yams and fabric softener every Sunday. Claudette kept it that way on purpose. She believed a certain kind of smell made people feel like they belonged somewhere. Like the house was generous, like the woman who ran it was generous too. 60 people had walked through that front door over the years, believing exactly that. Alicia had been one of them. She had been walking through that door for 6 years, bringing a covered dish every single time, laughing at the right moments, complimenting the right things, making herself small enough to fit the space Claudette allowed her. She had done all of that because she loved Jovan, or she had loved the man she believed Jovan was. She had been paying careful attention for the last 18 months, and what she was learning was that the man she married and the man currently standing in this kitchen were not the same person. They started the way it always started. Cars in the driveway, gospel on the radio, Claudette moving between the stove and the counter with the slow authority of a woman who had never once doubted her place in any room. Jovan's cousin Devon had arrived early. He had a habit of arriving early to Sunday dinners, which Alicia had always found strange for a man who never helped set the table or carry anything heavier than his own plate. Alicia had brought macaroni and cheese from scratch, the way her own mother had taught her, with 3 cheeses and a pinch of mustard powder, and 25 minutes in the oven at the right temperature. She set it on the counter near the other dishes. Claudette glanced at it once and said, without turning around fully, that it looked store-bought. Then she walked away. 2 of Jovan's aunts heard it. Neither of them said anything. Alicia smiled and went to find a seat. That was the first hour. The tension that came later had been building quietly, the way pressure builds inside something sealed. By the time Jovan started laughing too loud at something Devon said, a laugh that contained permission, that contained an audience, Alicia had already read the room completely. She knew where everyone was standing. She knew who was watching. She knew that whatever was about to happen had been arranged before she arrived. She had excused herself from the table and moved toward the hallway, not to escape, to breathe and think and make one call she had been putting off all day. She pulled out her phone, scrolled to Raymond's name, pressed call. She heard it connect. She heard Raymond's voice begin. And then she heard footsteps behind her that moved too fast and with too much intention. Jovan's hand closed around her wrist first. Then he pulled the phone free from her grip in one hard motion, the way someone takes something they have already decided belongs to them. The kitchen went still. The gospel on the radio felt suddenly inappropriate, too soft, too holy for the air that had just entered the room. Claudette turned from the stove. She did not move to intervene. She turned the way a person turns to watch something they have been waiting to see. Devon unfolded his arms in the doorway and leaned forward slightly, his eyes moving between Jovan and Alicia, with a small, private satisfaction that he did not bother to hide. Jovan looked at the screen of her phone. Then he looked at her. "Who you calling?" His voice was not loud. That was the thing about Jovan that people outside the house never understood. He did not need to be loud. He had learned somewhere along the way that quiet cruelty traveled further than a shout. It got into the walls. It stayed. You calling somebody to come get you? From my house? He laughed. That single short laugh that Alicia had come to understand meant he wanted everyone in the room to laugh with him. And two people did. A low sound. Just enough. Nobody is coming for you, Alicia. He said her name the way you say the name of something you have already decided to discard. You understand me? Not tonight. Not ever. He pressed end on the call. Or he believed he did. He set the phone on the counter beside the macaroni Claudette had called store-bought. Then he turned back toward the table like the moment was already behind him. The room waited. Everyone in that kitchen, every aunt, every cousin, every person who had ever sat at that table and said nothing, waited for Alicia to cry, to argue, to do something that would make the room feel normal again, even if normal was painful. Her lip trembled once. Then it stopped. She straightened her spine slowly, the way a person finds their footing after something shifts beneath them. Her right hand moved to the silver locket at her collarbone. She did not grab it. She touched it the way a person touches something sacred before they walk into fire. A single point of contact, a reminder. Then she dropped her hand, and she said nothing. And that silence, that specific, chosen, absolute silence, was the thing that made Claudette set down her stirring spoon. It was the thing that made Devon's small smile go uncertain at the edges. It was the thing that made two of Jovan's aunts look at each other across the kitchen with an expression that had no name but meant, "Something is different about this woman tonight, and I am not sure we are ready for what that means." Alicia was not begging. She was not breaking. She was standing in the middle of that kitchen like a woman who already knew how the story ended. Like a woman who had read the last page and was simply waiting for everyone else to catch up. 6 years before that kitchen, there had been a cookout in Atlanta on a late August afternoon, and Alicia had been standing near the drink table in a yellow dress when a man across the yard caught her attention. Not by looking at her, but by making the entire group around him laugh at exactly the same time. A synchronized sound. She had thought, whoever that is, he understands how rooms work. His name was Jovan Beaumont. He found her within 20 minutes. He told her she was the most real woman in the room. She told him that was an unusual compliment. He said he only gave unusual ones. They were married 18 months later. The ceremony was small and beautiful. Alicia's grandmother pressed a silver locket into her hand on the morning of the wedding. It was old, the kind of jewelry that carries the warmth of the hands it has passed through. Inside was a small photograph, her grandmother as a young woman, clear-eyed and unafraid. "Keep this close," her grandmother said. "It knows the truth even when you don't." Alicia had worn it every day since. The first 3 years of the marriage were real. She needed to believe that, and she did believe it, because it was true. They had built something genuine in the beginning. They had cooked together and argued about small things and made up and bought a house and talked about a future with the easy confidence of two people who did not yet know how much futures cost. The change did not arrive loudly. It arrived the way cold arrives through a wall with a small crack, not as a sudden event, but as a slow accumulation of temperature. The first time Jovan corrected Alicia in front of people, she had laughed it off. "A story she told wrong," he said. He fixed it for her in front of 4 friends, with the patient tone of a man correcting a child. She laughed. Everyone moved on, but she remembered. The first Sunday dinner where Claudette served every dish at the table before reaching Alicia's, even the store-bought rolls from the refrigerator section. Alicia said nothing. She watched. She filed it away. The name appeared on his phone in the second year. Tasha. She saw it in a notification while Jovan was showering, just a name and a fragment of a message that her eyes caught before she could decide whether to look. She asked him about it once, carefully, without accusation. He told her it was a work contact. He said it with the particular flatness of a man who had prepared that answer in advance. She did not ask again, but she did not forget. The finances shifted in the third year. A bank statement arrived, addressed only to Jovan. She noticed it was from an account she had no access to. When she mentioned it, he said it was for a business investment, something he was handling separately, nothing she needed to be involved in. She nodded. She filed that away, too. What Alicia had learned, over years of watching and saying little, was that patterns told the truth that people refused to speak out loud. And the pattern she had been observing for 18 months was no longer ambiguous. Something was ending. She did not yet know the full shape of it, but she knew it was already in motion. She just did not know yet how many people had been helping it along. 3 months before that Sunday kitchen, on a Tuesday morning in October, Alicia had taken a personal day from work. She had not told Jovan. She had been doing that occasionally now, moving through her own life without announcing herself, because she had started to understand that silence was not only a weapon used against her. It could be a tool she carried, too. Jovan left at 8:15. He said he had a contractor meeting across town. She stood at the window and watched his car pull out of the driveway, and then she stood there a moment longer, the way a person stands when they are deciding something. She found the laptop open on the kitchen counter. She had not gone looking for it. It was simply there, the way evidence tends to be, patient, waiting for the right set of eyes. The email thread was open. Tasha's name sat at the top of the screen like it had always belonged there. Alicia read. She did not skim. She read the way a person reads something they will need to remember for a long time, slowly, completely, without flinching. The messages were not only romantic, they were logistical. Tasha asking about when the transfer would clear. Jovan telling her just a few more weeks. Then we're done with all of this. Done with all of this. Alicia read those words 4 times. She felt something move through her chest, not a breaking sound, not a collapse, but something quieter and colder and more permanent. The specific feeling of a door closing on a version of your life that you had not yet agreed to leave. She opened her phone and photographed every screen. 12 images, methodical, unhurried. Then she opened the folder beside the email window. Documents, a property deed. She read the address, Decatur, Georgia. She read the purchase date. She read the names listed on the deed. Jovan Beaumont, Claudette Beaumont. She set the phone down on the counter. She read both names again. Not Tasha, his mother. The savings she had helped build. 6 years of double shifts at the hospital. 6 years of saying, not yet, not this year. We're saving. 6 years of watching that account grow with the quiet pride of a woman who believed she was building something that would outlast her hard work. A significant portion of it had been moved, transferred, used to purchase a property that bore her mother-in-law's name alongside her husband's. A house Alicia had never been told about. A house that had no room for her on its deed or in its future. The woman who smiled at Alicia every Sunday, who complained about her macaroni and corrected her presence and made her small in rooms full of family. That woman had not simply tolerated the betrayal. She had helped architect it. She had put her name on it. She had made herself a co-owner of Alicia's loss. Alicia sat at the kitchen table. She did not move for 11 minutes. She counted them. The house was very quiet around her, the kind of quiet that feels like it is listening. Her hand rested on the silver locket at her throat, and she held it there without squeezing. Just contact, just the cool weight of old silver and old truth against her palm. Then she picked up her phone and called Raymond Cole. Raymond had known her family since Alicia was 12 years old. He had been a young attorney when her parents first hired him, and he had built a practice over the years on the kind of quiet reputation that comes from handling difficult things with dignity. He answered on the second ring. She told him what she had found. Her voice was level. She did not waver. He listened without interrupting. Then he said, "Don't confront anyone. Don't move anything. Don't let him know you know. Come see me Thursday." She said, "I'll be there." What she did not say, what she had not yet decided how to say, was that she did not want to simply divorce Jovan. She wanted the truth to be seen. She wanted every person who had sat at that Sunday table and smiled and said nothing and benefited from her smallness to understand, in a room full of witnesses, exactly what had been done. Raymond would understand that. She would explain it Thursday. For the 3 months that followed, Alicia Beaumont performed normal with the kind of discipline that does not come easily and does not come free. She returned to Sunday dinners. She greeted Claudette warmly. She sat at the table and passed the bread and laughed at the right moments. She asked Jovan about his day when he came home. She made his coffee life like a woman with nothing on her mind, like a woman who had accepted her position, like a woman whose quiet had no bottom to it. Jovan read her stillness as defeat. This was his most significant mistake. He grew more careless in direct proportion to how safe he felt. He stopped checking whether his location they had opened 3 years ago and never updated. She discovered this on a Saturday afternoon when he told her he was at a job site, and his location showed him parked at a residential address in Buckhead for 4 hours. She screenshotted it, forwarded it to Raymond. A week later, someone tagged a group photo on a social media post, a restaurant gathering, friends and faces she didn't fully recognize. And in the background, slightly out of focus but unmistakable, was Jovan, with his hand on the back of a woman's chair. The woman was looking at the camera with the relaxed confidence of someone who had recently been told she had nothing to hide. Tasha. Alicia saved the image, forwarded it to Raymond. Raymond was building something careful and complete. The financial records, the property deed, the transferred marital funds, the email thread, every photograph and screenshot Alicia had gathered. He worked without urgency and without gaps. He told Alicia, at their third meeting in his office on a Thursday afternoon, that what Jovan and Claudette had done with those marital funds was not simply morally wrong. It was legally actionable. The property in Decatur, purchased partially with money from the joint marital account, was entangled in the marriage, regardless of whose names appeared on the deed. Claudette's name on that document did not protect her. It exposed her. Alicia listened. She nodded once. Then she told Raymond about the family reunion. The Beaumont family held an annual dinner every spring, a catered event at a rented hall, 60 or more people, the kind of gathering that Claudette treated as a personal audience. This year, the woman who usually handled the coordination had a family emergency and stepped back. Alicia had volunteered immediately. She told Jovan it was her way of contributing more to the family. He had patted her shoulder and said that was good of her. She handled the venue. She handled the catering. She handled the invitations. She built the guest list carefully and completely. Family, friends, Claudette's church sisters, Jovan's business associates, the neighbors, the cousins. Miss Ernestine from 2 streets over, who had called Alicia in quiet concern after the block party incident. And at the bottom of the list, in the section labeled Additional Guests, she typed a single name, Raymond Cole. She closed the laptop and went to make dinner. The Sunday before the reunion, something shifted in the Beaumont kitchen that nobody could fully explain afterward. Alicia arrived at the weekly dinner in a dark green dress she had bought for herself 2 weeks prior, not for any occasion, just because she had stood in the store and thought, I want this. And then she had bought it without asking anyone. She wore the silver locket, as always. She was warm at dinner, genuinely present. She asked Claudette about her church auxiliary meeting with real interest. She engaged with Jovan's aunts about their grandchildren by name, remembering details from conversations 3 months old. She was not performing submission. She was performing arrival, the specific energy of a woman who has decided she is no longer waiting for permission to be herself in any room. Devon noticed it first. He watched her from across the table for a long moment, a strange stillness in his expression, like a man who has heard a sound he cannot identify and cannot stop hearing. Claudette made about the house needing better seasonal decor, directed at no one specifically but angled at Alicia. One about how stressful Alicia's job must be, and whether she had considered a simpler life path, something with less pressure. Both in empty air. Alicia received them pleasantly, responded briefly with something kind and neutral, and moved the conversation forward. They simply passed through the space where Alicia's old reactions used to live and found nothing there. Claudette reached for her water glass. Her expression did not change, but she reached for the glass. Jovan, emboldened by weeks of what he had read as Alicia's quiet acceptance, made his own move near the end of the meal. He mentioned casually, for the table, for the room, with his eyes moving to Claudette just briefly enough for Alicia to catch, that he was looking at some real estate investment opportunities. Exciting ones. He said it with the ease of a man who has already made the decision and is only now announcing the performance of having made it. Several people at the table looked at Alicia. What they saw was not what they expected. She was cutting her food, evenly, unhurried, with the same clean strokes. And at the corner of her mouth, not a smile of amusement, not a social smile, but something smaller and more specific, was the expression of a woman watching a sequence of events arrive in exactly the order she had predicted. The expression of someone who has already read the ending and is simply watching the story catch up. Claudette glanced at the silver locket. Just once, a quick look, the kind that tries not to look like looking. Then she glanced away. In the car on the way home, Jovan told Alicia he would need her help with reunion logistics. Tables, decor, the smaller details. He said it the way he said most things to her now, as a statement, not a question. Assuming yes, assuming compliance. She said quietly, I'm already handling it. He nodded and looked back at the road. He did not ask what she meant. Later, he would identify that moment as the one where he should have asked. Later, he would understand that he had been given a warning in the language of calm, and he had not recognized the language. The event hall on the night of the Beaumont family reunion was beautiful in the way that spaces become beautiful when someone has thought carefully about every detail. Round tables with white linens, soft lighting, a catered spread along the far wall that smelled like a real Sunday dinner. Family photographs printed and mounted on a display board near the entrance. 3 generations of Beaumonts, formal and casual, laughing and serious, the visual story of a family that believed in its own permanence. 63 people filled the room over the first hour. The energy was warm and familiar. Music at low volume. Children chasing each other between the tables. Older relatives finding seats with the authority of people who understand that certain chairs belong to them by now. Claudette moved through the room like its center of gravity. She accepted greetings with the practiced warmth of a woman who has always known the difference between being liked and being needed, and who had always preferred the second. Her church sisters formed a small orbit around her near the dessert table. Jovan moved through the room beside her for a while, laughing and handshaking, collecting the social credit that had always come easily to him in rooms like this. Tasha arrived 20 minutes into the evening. She had not been on the guest list. She entered on Jovan's arm, and he steered her toward two cousins near the far wall and introduced her, without lowering his voice, as a business associate. She sat beside him at a table near the center of the room, visible, deliberate, with her hands folded and her posture settled, and the specific ease of a woman who has decided this room already belongs to her. She looked toward Alicia once, across the tables and the low music and the warm lighting, with a look that carried no apology. Alicia was near the entrance, speaking quietly with Miss Ernestine, who had arrived early in her church best, a small woman in her late 70s, with the kind of eyes that have seen enough life to read any room correctly within 30 seconds of entering it. They spoke briefly. Miss Ernestine squeezed Alicia's hand once, then she found her seat. Alicia moved through the room. She checked in with the caterers. She spoke to the AV table near the front. She greeted Claudette's church sisters warmly, by name. She spoke to 3 of Jovan's business associates about their families, asking specific questions, remembering specific details. She was fully present in every conversation. And at her collarbone, as it always was, the silver locket caught the light with each movement. At 7:45, she walked to the front of the room and picked up the microphone. The room settled naturally. They expected a welcome, a few warm words from the woman who had organized everything so beautifully this year. They expected brief and gracious. She began that way. Thank you all for being here tonight. The Beaumont family has always known how to fill a room with love, and tonight is no different. People nodded. Someone near the back said, "That's right." The room was easy and warm. Then Alicia's voice shifted. Not harder, not louder, but steadier. The way a voice gets when someone has stopped performing and started speaking. Before we close, because I believe the people you love deserve the truth. And I believe the truth should never have to hide. The fork sounds stopped. The low conversations stopped. The room did not go tense, it went still, which is different. Tension is a body waiting for impact. Stillness is a body that has already understood that something important is happening. Alicia reached up to the silver locket. She opened it. Inside, behind the small photograph of her grandmother, clear-eyed and unafraid, was a slip of paper, folded twice. On it, a storage code. The key to a cloud document file that she and Raymond had assembled over 3 months of careful work. She handed the paper to the young man at the AV table without looking away from the room. He had been briefed. He knew what to do. The screen behind her lit up. The room read before it reacted. That was the part nobody who was there would fully describe afterward. That specific 30 seconds when 63 people processed the same information in silence. Bank records, a property deed, names at the top of both documents that belonged to people in this room. A transfer of funds from a joint marital account into a property purchase in Decatur, Georgia. an email thread with timestamps and amounts, and the phrase, in Jovan's own typed words, "Just a few more weeks, then we're done with all of this." Claudette stood up. Her voice was sharp and controlled, the voice she used when she wanted to close a situation before it finished opening. "Alicia, this is not the place for this." Alicia turned toward her with complete calm. She did not lower the microphone. "Claudette, one word, quiet. You put your name on a property deed purchased with money from our marriage." She held the pause just long enough. "You made it the place." The room did not gasp. It went to a deeper level of silence than it had been before. The silence of people who have just watched a wall they believed was permanent come down, and are now standing in the open air on the other side of it trying to remember how to breathe. Jovan rose from his chair. The shock on his face was cycling too fast. Anger, disbelief, calculation, something that looked briefly like fear, and he could not settle on any one expression because none of them were equal to the moment. He moved toward the front of the room. Raymond Cole stepped away from the back wall. He had been there all evening, quietly. One hand in the pocket of his jacket, the other holding a legal folder with the particular relaxed grip of a man who has carried important documents before and is not nervous about carrying them now. He placed himself between Jovan and the microphone with a simple, unhurried movement. Jovan stopped. He recognized Raymond. He knew what Raymond Cole, standing in a room full of witnesses with a legal folder, meant. He had enough intelligence to understand, in that moment, that he had walked into something that had been built specifically for him over a very long time, and that it was complete. Alicia continued. Her voice did not waver once. "3 months ago, in our kitchen, you grabbed my phone and told me no one was coming for me." She looked at Jovan directly. Not with anger, with something clearer than anger. The call was already connected. Raymond heard everything. The room processed this. The meaning of it moved through the space like weather. The night in the kitchen, the phone, the words that Jovan had said to a room full of family, with the confidence of a man who believed his wife had no one. And the understanding that a lawyer had been on the other end of that call, listening from the moment it connected until Jovan pressed the wrong button and believed he had ended it. He had not ended it. Tasha rose from her chair. She began to say something. Her voice carried the remnant of her earlier confidence, the arrogance she had carried into this room on Jovan's arm. But before she could finish the first sentence, Miss Ernestine's voice came from across the room. Quiet. Absolute. "Sit down, baby. It's over." Tasha sat down. The room did not cheer. It did not applaud. It stayed in that deep, particular silence, the silence of people bearing witness, as Alicia accepted the legal folder from Raymond's outstretched hand and opened it to the first page. "I filed for divorce 3 weeks ago." She said it the way you say a fact, without drama, without satisfaction, like something that had already happened and was only now being acknowledged out loud. "Raymond has served the papers." She closed the folder, held it at her side. "I didn't come here tonight to embarrass anyone." She looked at the room, the aunts, the cousins, the church sisters, the business associates, the children who had stopped running and were standing near the wall, sensing the weight of the room without understanding it. "I came here to be free, in front of the people who deserved to know the truth." She set the microphone down on the table beside her. She picked up her purse. She reached up one final time and touched the silver locket at her throat. Not a gesture for the room, not performance, just the private habit of a woman who had carried that object through every hard moment of the last 6 years, and was now, finally, carrying it into something other than survival. Then she walked toward the exit. The room stayed where it was. In the weeks that followed, the structure Jovan Beaumont had built began to come apart in the specific and unglamorous way that structures come apart when they are built on concealment. Not all at once, but piece by piece, each piece making the next one easier to lose. The property in Decatur was legally entangled in the divorce proceedings. Raymond's documentation was thorough. The marital funds used in the purchase were traceable, provable, and legally significant. Jovan's attorney told him, in a quiet office conversation, that Jovan did not repeat to anyone that the exposure of those records had complicated his position substantially. Two of his business associates, men who had been in that room, men who had read the screen and watched Jovan stand and reach toward his wife with that uncovered face, quietly pulled back from pending agreements. No confrontation, no explanation. Just the kind of institutional distance that happens when reputation cracks in front of the people whose opinion finances depend on. He called Alicia twice in the first week. She did not answer either call. The second time, Raymond responded on her behalf with a single professional message directing all communication through counsel. Claudette did not attend Sunday service the week after the reunion, or the week after that. Her church sisters, the women who had orbited her at the dessert table, who had received her warmth for years as though it were something she gave freely rather than something she rationed carefully, had been in that room. They had read the screen. They called her less. The orbit thinned. She called Jovan daily. He began answering less frequently, overwhelmed by his own unraveling, unable to manage his mother's alongside it. The woman who had built so much of his confidence, who had positioned herself at the center of his life and his decisions and his finances, began to experience from her own son the particular silence she had helped teach him to use against his wife. She recognized it. She had no language to object to it that did not also object to herself. Tasha understood within 2 weeks that what she had been promised and what actually existed were two different things. The money was complicated. The property was legally frozen. The man who had told her the path was clear had turned out to be a man who had cleared the path by dismantling someone else's floor. She moved away from the situation with the kind of speed that confirmed she had always been invested in the outcome rather than the person. Jovan said things to her in those final conversations that he had said before, to someone else, in a kitchen, on a Sunday, in front of a room that had stayed silent. The pattern was not hard to see once you were no longer the person he was performing for. Devon reached out through a mutual family friend 6 weeks after the reunion. He did not call Alicia directly. He sent a name, Raymond Cole, through someone who passed it along quietly. He had witnessed things over the years, the message said, things he had stayed silent about. He was willing to speak now, if it helped. Alicia received the message, read it once, and set it aside. She did not need it. But she held the acknowledgement of it for a moment, the belated recognition from a cousin who had leaned in too many doorways while she stood in too many kitchens. And she let it mean what it meant, without needing it to mean more. 8 months later, on a Saturday morning in late spring, Alicia Beaumont was sitting on the small porch of her own apartment when her phone buzzed against the armrest. The apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building in a quiet part of Atlanta she had always liked and never lived in, the kind of neighborhood with old trees and courtyard benches and the sound of children in the mornings. She had chosen it by herself, without asking anyone's opinion. the way she had started choosing most things. The furniture inside was a combination of pieces she had kept and pieces she had bought new, and every single item was there because she had wanted it, which was a simple fact that had not always been simple. She was in the soft chair she had bought from a small shop on a Tuesday afternoon, not for any occasion, just because she had seen it and thought, yes, that one. A cup of coffee was in both hands, still warm. The courtyard below was already busy with the low, comfortable noise of a Saturday. A child chasing a ball, someone on a bench reading, a dog moving in slow, exploratory circles near the far wall. She looked at her phone. The message was from Miss Ernestine. "Proud of you, baby girl." Alicia smiled. Not a small, managed, careful smile. A full one. Easy and unhurried, the kind that reaches the eyes before the mouth and stays there. She had taken the promotion at the hospital. Director of Operations, a title she had earned years before it was offered, and that now came with an office with actual windows and a team that had told her at her first staff meeting that they were glad she was there. She had told them she was glad too, and had meant it in a way that was new. The consulting practice was still small, a leased office space downtown, a growing list of clients, the careful, early architecture of something she had been sketching in her mind during the months she was preparing everything else. It turned out that the discipline required to build a legal case in secret over 90 days was not entirely different from the discipline required to build a business. She had already known how to be patient. She had already known how to move without announcing herself. She opened the locket with one hand, the way she had done thousands of times. The photograph of her grandmother looked back at her, clear-eyed, unafraid, a young woman who had never doubted that the truth was worth carrying even when it was heavy. The slip of paper with the storage code was gone now. She had removed it the morning after the reunion. What was left was only the photograph and the warmth the silver held from being close to her for so long. She closed it and held the coffee in both hands and watched the courtyard. 3 weeks before this morning, she had driven past her old building on an errand and had not felt anything particular about the route. What she had felt was the specific and underrated experience of driving through a place that used to mean pain and finding that it had become simply a place, a building, a street, a coordinate with no particular weight. She had not known until she turned the corner and felt nothing, that that was what freedom felt like in the body. Not dramatic, not loud, just a street that used to hurt and now didn't. Some women don't fight back loud. They go quiet, they go patient, they go prepared. And then one day, the whole room finds out why. If this story stayed with you, it can carry more power than noise ever will. And there are more stories here, and every single one of them belongs to a woman who chose dignity over drama and won.
The whole ballroom fell silent when his mother snatched the microphone. "Let's be honest, my son married a broke little gold digger." Laughter swept through the room. Her husband held his mother's hand, not hers. The bride never said a word. Before the night was over, every smile in that room would vanish because none of them knew who they'd just humiliated. Look at her. No family, no name, nothing. A clean truth is kinder than a pretty lie, sweetheart. She should thank us for letting her wear that dress. Efwa stood in the center of the floor in her white gown and did not move. Her husband, Darius Ashford, sat at the head table and looked at his shoes. Behind him, a woman named Renee lifted her phone and filmed, smiling like she already knew how the night would end. And Beatrice Ashford, his mother, lowered the microphone with the calm of a woman who believed she had won. He had no idea the woman he was throwing to the wolves was the one who quietly held everything his family loved. In Efwa's small clutch, resting against her fingers, was a single brass key, cold, unused. She had carried it for 11 months and never opened what it opened. Not yet. Emotional drama and shocking twists, don't forgettable stories. And before we begin, let me know Darius Ashford had not always been this cruel. 2 years earlier, he was a soft-spoken man who waited for Efwa outside the hospital where she worked the night shift. He brought her coffee. He walked her to the bus in the cold. He told her she was the only honest person he had ever met. She believed him. Efwa was a nurse, a good one. She had turned down a charge nurse promotion to sit beside her father through his last year, Silas Grant, a quiet man who wore the same worn coat for 20 years and never once complained. He died on a Tuesday. She held his hand until it went still. She did not cry at the funeral. She cried later, alone, in a kitchen that suddenly felt too big. Darius came to that funeral. He stood at the back. He said all the right things. What she did not know was why he came. Because Darius Ashford was already in trouble. The Ashford name still shone on the front of a bank downtown, but the money behind it had thinned to almost nothing. Darius had borrowed against everything. He had signed papers he should not have signed. He was a drowning man looking for a rope, and a nurse with no rich relatives seemed like a safe, grateful thing to hold on to. He had no idea. They married 8 months after her father was buried. From the first week, the Ashfords made their feelings clear, politely, always politely. A nurse, how useful, Beatrice said at their first family dinner, passing the bread. Every family needs someone practical. Sweet, but not a career, an aunt murmured. You'll fit right in, a cousin laughed. We can always use more help in the kitchen. Efwa said thank you. She smiled. She washed the dishes no one asked her to wash. Darius said nothing in her defense. He was watching his mother's face to see if he had pleased her. That was the year the calls started coming late. A name kept surfacing, Renee. Renee from the office. Renee who understood the business. Renee who could open doors. Efwa found them once in a photograph on his phone. A dinner. Renee's hand resting on Darius's arm, both of them laughing at something the camera had not caught. She said nothing. She only noticed that the more Darius chased the Ashford Bank's survival, the colder he grew toward the woman who had held his hand in the dark. And there was the envelope. Weeks after the funeral, a lawyer named Solomon Price had come to her door with a slim envelope and a single brass key inside. He said her father had left instructions. He said the key opened a box downtown. He said gently, "When you are ready, come and see me, not before." Efwa had put the key in a drawer and left it there. She was grieving. She did not want money talk. She did not want anything but her father back. She had no idea what she was leaving unopened. The morning after the wedding, she opened it. Not because of the humiliation, because of a phone call. At 6 in the morning, Darius stood in the kitchen with his coat already on. He did not look at her. This isn't working. My mother's right. A clean break is kinder. We were married yesterday, Efwa said. And today I'm being honest. He set a folder on the table. Sign these. It's simpler for everyone. She looked at the folder. She did not touch it. I'll have your things sent somewhere, he said. Then he left for the office, to Renee, to the deal. Afua sat in the quiet for a long time. Then she took the brass key out of the drawer. Solomon Price's office was small and clean and smelled of old paper. He rose when she entered, as if he had been waiting for her for 11 months, which in a way he had. Your father hoped you would take longer, he said. He wanted you to have peace first. I don't have peace, Afua said. I have a folder my husband wants me to sign. Solomon's face did not change, but something in his eyes sharpened. Do not sign anything today, he he said. Not one page. Do you understand me? Why? He folded his hands. Your father left you more than you think. How much more? In time, Solomon said. There is more, but not yet. Today we start with one thing only. He slid a document across the desk. Old, formal, her father's careful signature at the bottom. Your father did not leave you money, Afua, Solomon said. He left you a trust, and a trust is a very different thing than cash. She read the top line 3 times. What does it hold? She asked. Solomon only smiled, sad and proud at once. That, he said, is the next question, and we are going to answer it slowly, like evidence, not like revenge. She left his office with more questions than she had walked in with, but she did not sign Darius's folder. The next day she came back, and Solomon opened the safe deposit box the brass key belonged to. It's yellow at the edges, a ledger in her father's hand, and a single line underlined twice that made her breath catch. Ashford Union Bank. Your father, Afua said slowly, why does he have papers with my husband's family name on them? Because 21 years ago, Solomon said, the Ashford Bank almost died. Bad loans, pride, no one would touch it. He tapped the certificates. Your father touched it, quietly. He never wanted his name on the door. He only wanted it to survive and the workers to keep their jobs. Afua stared at the papers. What are you telling me? I am telling you one thing today, Solomon said. Your father bought in, deeply. He gathered the papers before she could count them. How deeply we will get to. There is more, but not yet. She went home that night to an empty apartment. Darius did not come home at all. She did not cry. She wrote down everything she had learned. Dates, names, numbers, like a nurse charting a patient, like evidence. 3 days later, Solomon called her with a strange note in his voice. There is a charge on an account in your name, one you never opened. Afua sat down slowly. I don't have an account at that bank. You do now, Solomon said. Opened 4 months ago, your name, not your signature. A pause. Someone has been moving money through it, money that isn't theirs to move. Who? That, Solomon said, is the question I don't want to answer until I'm certain. Come tomorrow. She barely slept. A fake account, her name on it, money flowing through it like water through a stranger's hands. She began to understand that her humiliation at the wedding had not been the danger. It had been the distraction. The next scene was the one that changed her. Solomon laid 3 documents side by side on his desk. A loan application, a guarantee, a signature. Her signature. I never signed this, she said. I know. The loan was enormous. It was drawn against the Ashford Bank, and the name of the borrower, printed in clean black letters, was a company she had never heard of. Whose company is this? Solomon slid a business card next to it, worn, bent at one corner. She had seen it before, in Darius's coat pocket months ago. Renee Callis, Acquisitions. The outsider, Afua whispered. Your husband has been forging your name to raise money he cannot raise himself, Solomon quieted, and the woman he raised it with is not who he thinks she is. What does that mean? It means we have 2 problems in that room, not one, and they do not fully trust each other. That, Afua, is a door. She looked at the forged signature for a long time. Then she asked the question that turned her from a victim into a player. How much of that bank is mine? She asked. Solomon was quiet. Enough, he said, to end them, but not yet. There is one more thing you need to know before I tell you, and you need to be sitting down when I tell it. She had no idea it could get bigger. It got bigger. But before he could tell her, the game changed. That week, Beatrice Ashford made her move. A letter arrived, formal, on heavy paper. It informed Afua that the family had begun an orderly dissolution of the marriage, and that as she had contributed nothing of value, she was to vacate the Ashford apartment within 30 days. 30 days. At the bottom, another line, softer, more dangerous. The family had also filed to have Afua's name removed from certain records for her own protection. Afua understood at once. They were not just throwing her out, they were quietly erasing her from the bank's paperwork, cutting her out of something that, though they did not know it, legally belonged to her more than it belonged to them. She took a photograph of the empty wall where their wedding portrait used to hang. She had taken it down herself. She posted it with 5 words. Some spaces feel lighter, empty. Renee saw it, Renee who was watching everything, and Renee did something interesting. She replied, publicly, kindly, wishing you healing, sweetheart. Fresh starts suit some people. It was a small cruelty, but it told Afua everything. Renee was not hiding. Renee was confident. Renee thought she had already won the bank, which meant Renee did not know who Afua was either. Good. Afua called Solomon that night. Tell me the last thing, she said. I'm sitting down. The line was quiet for a moment. The deal your husband is chasing, the merger that saves the Ashford Bank, it cannot close without a majority approval. You are, Solomon said. Your father did not just buy in, Afua. He bought control. He left it in the trust. You are the named successor. The whole thing, the bank, the deal, the future your husband is forging your name to reach, none of it moves without your signature. The room went very still. I thought they came to me for a signature, Afua said slowly, the whole time. The whole time, Solomon agreed. They just came for the wrong pages. For the first time in weeks, Afua almost smiled. But Solomon's voice tightened. There is a complication, the midpoint of every trap. A clause in the trust. If you do not formally claim the seat before the merger vote, control passes to the bank's board by default. And the board, Afua finished, is Beatrice's board. Is Beatrice's board, he said. You have 11 days. If you miss the vote, you lose everything your father built, quietly, forever. 11 days. She did not scream. She got to work. Over the next week, Afua did what no one expected the broke little gold digger to do. She learned. Every night after her hospital shift, she sat in Solomon's voting rights, the trust her father wrote like a love letter disguised as law. She found the second account. She traced the forged loan. She built a folder of her own, page by careful page, the way she had charted dying men back toward life. And she found something that made her hands go cold. A recording, kept in the trust file, her father near the end, his voice thin. If you are hearing this, baby girl, then someone has treated you as small. People will always look at a quiet woman and see nothing. Let them, then show them everything at once. Not with anger, with paper. Paper doesn't lie and it doesn't shout. Sign your name, Afua. It's worth more than all of theirs. She played it twice. She did not cry. Then she called the one person who could crack the room from the inside, Renee. Not to beg, to trade. They met in a coffee shop. Renee arrived in a sharp coat, sure of herself, ready to pity. I'll be quick, Afua said. You've been forging loans with my husband. His name protects him, yours doesn't. When this falls, he'll let you fall first. Men like Darius always do. Renee's smile flickered. And what do you want, sweetheart? The truth on record, Afua said, about who really planned all of this. She slid a single page across the table. You help me, you walk away before the fraud lands on you. You stay loyal to him, you go down as the woman who signed the papers. Renee looked at the page for a long time. Afua had guessed right. Renee had never loved Darius. Renee had used him to reach the bank, the same prize Afua now held in her hand. You're not what they said you were, Renee murmured. No, Afua said, I'm not. She had turned one of them. Now she had a witness, but she still had a seat to claim and 9 days left to do it. On the 10th day, Solomon confirmed the papers were clean. The trust was valid. Her claim was the very meeting where Darius planned to close his merger and save himself was set for the following afternoon. He did not know his own wife would be walking in. He did not know she owned the table. That night, Afua sat alone and took the brass key from her clutch one last time. She had carried it through her wedding, through her humiliation, through 11 months of grief. She set it on the table beside the trust deed. She had finally opened everything it opened. "For you, Daddy," she said. She did not cry. She chose the same white dress she had worn to the wedding, cleaned, pressed. She wore it like armor. Lawyers, Beatrice at the head of the table in pearls, Darius beside her, glowing, certain this was the day the family name was saved. Renee sat near the back, quiet, a folder in her lap. The chairman began to speak about the merger, about the vote, about the controlling interest that would make it final. The door opened. Efua walked in. The room turned. Beatrice's smile curdled. "This is a private meeting," Beatrice said coldly. "Security, please remove Mrs. Ashford," Efua corrected softly. "Still, for 11 more days at least." "You have no business here," Darius hissed, standing. "You have nothing. You are nothing." Solomon stepped in behind her and set a leather folder on the table. "She has everything," he said. "She's meeting cannot proceed without her." The room broke into noise. Efua did not raise her voice. She waited for the silence to come back on its own. It did. 21 years ago, a quiet man saved this bank when your name couldn't. He never asked for credit. He only asked that it survive. He opened the folder. His name was Silas Grant. He was my father, and he left me his seat at this table. She laid the certificates down one by one. "You called me a gold digger at my own wedding, in front of everyone. You said I had nothing." She looked at Beatrice, calm as still water. "You've been living inside something my father owned, all of you, for years." Beatrice's face went gray. Darius stared at the certificates like a man watching the floor open beneath him. "That's not possible," he whispered. "It's paper," Efua said. "Paper doesn't lie." The humiliation reversed itself in that room, slow and total. The cruelty now looked at Efua with wide, careful eyes. The woman they had dismissed held the vote that decided all their futures. "I'm calling security," Beatrice said, but her voice shook now. "This is a stunt." "Sit down, Mrs. Ashford," Solomon said quietly. "It gets worse for you." That was peak 1. The second bombshell landed before anyone could breathe. Efua turned to the chairman. "Before you vote on how the borrower funded its position," she set down the forged loan. "This is a loan drawn against this bank, guaranteed by a signature." She paused. "My signature. I never signed it." Gasps rippled down the table. "Someone forged my name to raise money he could not raise honestly. Someone opened an account in my name and moved this bank's money through it for 4 months. You didn't marry me for love, Darius. You married a woman you thought had nothing, so you could hang your debts on a name nobody would check." "You can't prove that," Darius said, but the sweat on his face was already proving it for him. "I don't have to," Efua said. She looked to the back of the room. Renee stood. She walked to the front, set her folder on the table, and opened it without a word. Bank records, emails, dates, Darius's own instructions in Darius's own writing. "He planned it before the wedding," Renee said, her voice flat and clear. "The account, the loans, the divorce. He told me the marriage was a means to an end. His words." She looked at Beatrice. "You signed off on erasing her from the records. That's on paper, too." Beatrice's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Darius lunged for the folder. Solomon's hand came down flat on top of it. "Forgery," Solomon said calmly. "Wire fraud. Falsifying bank records. These are not family matters, Mr. Ashford. These are federal ones." The room understood all at once that this was no longer a merger meeting. It was the end of the Ashfords. Efua had not screamed. She had not cried. She had walked in with paper, and the paper had done everything her father promised it would. "The merger is dead," she told the chairman quietly, "and I'll be exercising my seat starting today." Darius Ashford was arrested 3 weeks later. The forged loan, the false account, the money moved through his wife's stolen name, all of it documented, all of it real. Renee cooperated and kept herself out of a cell, but her name in the industry was finished, which was its own kind of prison for a woman who had wanted only to climb. Beatrice Ashford lost the pearls, the board seat, and the name she had worn like a crown. The last time Effawa saw her, she was signing papers in a small office, her hand shaking on the pen, being handed the same folder she had once tried to hand Effawa. Effawa did not gloat. She did not attend the sentencing. She had work to do. Because owning a bank, she decided, meant nothing if it only served the people who already had everything. She kept the doors open, she kept the tellers who had worked there 30 years, and then she did the thing her father would have loved. She opened the Silas Grant Fund. It was simple. Fair loans for women the banks turned away, mothers with no cosigner, widows with grief and no credit history, nurses who gave up promotions to sit beside dying fathers and came out the other side with empty hands and full hearts. No woman who walked through those doors would ever be called nothing. On the first morning it opened, a young mother sat across from Effawa with a baby on her hip and fear in her eyes, certain she would be turned away like everywhere else. Effawa slid a form across the desk. "Sign here," she said gently. "Your name is worth more than you've been told." The woman signed with a shaking hand. Effawa watched her go, the baby's small fingers curled around her collar, and felt something settle in her chest that had been unsettled for a very long time. On the wall behind her desk hung one worn coat, framed, her father's, and beside it a single brass key. It did not open a safe anymore. It only reminded her of what quiet people are worth when the world finally learns to look. She did not cry. She smiled, and she called the next name on the list. If this story with someone who needs to hear it, tell me in the